Richard Syrett's Strange Planet, following the truth wherever it leads, exposing evil and corruption and the secret machinations of powerful elites, revealing the high strangeness beneath the surface of our supposed reality. Coming to you from the Great White North and his studio beneath the stairs, here's Richard.
Welcome to the Audio Imaginarium. Come on in, weary traveler, hang your cloak on a peg, grab a stool, and come gather near the fire. There are stories to be told, and you are among friends. Carlos Cagina is our technical producer, and Ryan White is the live stream producer. Please take a moment, check out my YouTube and Rumble channels, Strange Planet.
Good evening. We have a mystery story out of Washington. 5 people have been arrested and charged with breaking into the headquarters of the Democratic National Committee in the middle of the night.
The Democratic National Committee is located in the Watergate office building. The burglars forced a stairwell door, then taped its latch open. The door, now part of police evidence, was noticed by one of the guards employed by the Watergate complex. At first, the police found nothing. Then they spied 5 men crouching behind some desks.
Neither the president, obviously, or anybody in the White House, or anybody in authority in any of the committees working for the reelection of the president have any responsibility for it.
There you go. 50 years ago this week, the Watergate scandal began early in the morning of June 17, 1972, when several burglars were arrested in the office of the Democratic National Committee, located, of course, in the Watergate complex of buildings in Washington, D.C., and this was no ordinary robbery. The prowlers were connected to President Richard Nixon's reelection campaign, and they had been caught wiretapping phones and stealing documents. The ensuing attempted cover-up of the break-in led to President Nixon's eventual resignation in August of 1974. Watergate, our great national nightmare, in the words of President Gerald Ford, was the most impactful scandal in American and perhaps world history. Watergate, for the next 2 hours, and here with a guided tour is John O'Connor. John is an experienced trial lawyer practicing law in San Francisco. He's tried cases in state and federal court throughout the country, served as Assistant U.S. Attorney in Northern California, and of course, perhaps best noted for representing Mark Felt, who was, of course, Deep Throat. He's the author of Postgate, How the Washington Post Betrayed Deep Throat, Covered Up Watergate, began today's partisan advocacy journalism, and his latest, hot off the presses, is The Mysteries of Watergate, What Really Happened. John, welcome back. How are you?
Hey, good, Richard.
Can we start just 50 years ago? It's a long time. Some of my listeners are familiar with the word Watergate, the term Watergate, which has come to sort of symbolize, the gate symbolizes all conspiracies and scandals. Now everything is something gate. It all begins with Watergate. But just for those not overly familiar, give us a brief timeline for some context of the break-in itself and who participated.
Well, it was the early morning, June 17th, 1972, when security guards making their rounds saw tape on the exit door at the basement level of the Watergate office complex. Well, the Watergate office complex is the hub in Washington, D.C. of a lot of activity. All the big rollers from other parts of the country and the world will stay there when they're in Washington at that time. And he noticed the day before, 2 hours earlier, he had noticed the door was taped open. And so he thought maybe it's a maintenance man. Maintenance people do that. So he removed the tape. Thought, well, a maintenance man had left it on there. And a couple hours later, he found tape on again. So he thought there's a burglary in process. There was one in process. He called the police. He called the security guard, eventually the police. They went to the 6th floor. They went to the various floors. And by the time they got to the 6th floor, they found burglars in the offices of the Democratic National Committee, 5 of them. All of them, interestingly, somehow connected with the infamous Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba under President John F. Kennedy, trying to liberate the country from Castro, which was an abject failure. But nonetheless, they caught these 5 fellows in the burglary. And what I would tell you is, eventually, the cover-up of that crime ended up resulting in Richard Nixon's resignation from office right ahead of the posse. He was going to get impeached and removed with certainty. So he simply resigned. He resigned 2 years later on August 9th, 1974. And it is the most impactful scandal in world history. And all of it, for your audience, really prompted by sensational journalism. Originally, this thing happened. It was very curious to all of us. And I was a young lawyer at the time. And everybody was curious about what had happened. But it did not seem to get great public attention for the first 4 or 5 months. And the things seemed to be dying away. The government indicted the 7 people involved, the 5 burglars and their 2 supervisors who were in a hotel room across the street. The government got the 8th person, the wiretap monitor, to turn state's evidence and be a witness. So those 8 people were involved. And everyone thought the thing was over. Then all of a sudden, the Post started some very sensational stories, which tended to tie the burglary to a much broader campaign of spying and sabotage emanating from the White House. That got everybody's attention. Eventually, things broke loose. A couple of people had to turn evidence, state's evidence. John Dean was a White House counsel most famous for testifying against Nixon. So that, in a word, eventually, for your audience, 40 Nixon officials or supporters went to jail as a result of implications coming from the Watergate scandal. Not all of it dealing with the burglary, but other things that were discovered at the time, because more and more as the covers were pulled back, other crimes were discovered. But it was a terrible scandal. It resulted in the removal of the president, and Gerald Ford became president. And probably because of the terrible the effects of the scandal, Ford probably lost the election narrowly to Jimmy Carter as Jimmy Carter pounced on Watergate. So this had profound implications for our country's political history, probably had effect on Vietnam. After Watergate, the Democrats pulled all of the deals that Nixon had made with the South Vietnamese, and that's when we had people grabbing onto helicopters and fleeing Vietnam. So it had profound effect on our foreign policy, profound effect on our domestic policies, and thus Gate. It was such a sensational scandal that impacted everything. We were all glued to our television sets. Every day it was must-see TV. I was in San Francisco and I started subscribing to the Post for a while because it was such an important paper. The Post was vaulted from really a second-tier, decent but not great local rag that was sort of a gossipy Washington, D.C. only paper to a paper of international renown, great prestige. The paper won Pulitzers. The reporters, Woodward and Bernstein for the Post, had a best-selling book, a hit movie, wonderful movie, by the way. And it goes down in our lore, and people are still talking about the gate of it.
John O'Connor, the author of The Mysteries of Watergate, What Really Happened. So you mentioned, the Bay of Pigs, and I think you mentioned the Plumbers. Let's go back, because the origin of what led to the break-in at the Watergate complex goes back maybe even further, but certainly to 1971 with the Pentagon Papers and the leak of the Pentagon Papers by this Rand Corporation employee, Daniel Ellsberg, who leaks all the Pentagon secrets about the Vietnam War in 1971. And this, of course, enrages Nixon. He creates, this group of counterintelligence people to plug the leaks, and hence they're called the Plumbers. So, who were the Plumbers?
Well, first of all, the Plumbers it was their own nickname because they were there to. It was called might be the Domestic Intelligence Unit, something like that, but basically it's their own joke because they were plugging leaks. They called themselves the Plumbers. The 2 plumbers that were first named were Boy Scouts. There was a fellow named Eagle Crow, whose nickname was Evil Crow, the same way you call a terribly obese person tiny. Eagle Crow was the most straight, upright Boy Scouts ever come along. The other original plumber was a fellow named David Young, who was an assistant to Henry Kissinger. Now, what had happened was Kissinger was outraged by the leak, the Pentagon Papers. He was also outraged by the leak in 1969 of the Cambodian bombing in the Vietnam War. Somebody leaked that they were bombing the Vietnamese supply lines in Cambodia. And I was in law school at the time, and the campuses just broke out tremendously then because it looked like Nixon was widening the war when he'd really found a pretty clever way to get the Vietnamese. Their supply lines were going through the neighboring country. And of course, he went over there and bombed it. But Nixon was livid. Kissinger was really livid and had the FBI wiretap a bunch of people, newsmen and national security officials. J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the FBI, was not so happy that the FBI had been dragged into this. They didn't quite like tapping newsmen, didn't like tapping national security officials. So Hoover said after this, no more. So that was one of the precursors to Watergate, because the White House realized that the FBI was not going to help them plug these leaks. They weren't going far enough. Even in the Ellsberg case, they were upset at Hoover because he wouldn't investigate hard enough. So they brought in their own investigative people. I talked about the two plumbers. They were the innocent guys. They were Boy Scouts. But soon, this CIA fellow, former CIA agent named Howard Hunt, was hired by the White House to start doing this sort of dirty work, sort of sleuthing. And what nobody realized was that thereby the CIA was infiltrating the White House. And that is actually the case. You can see it now through records, but at the time they'd never thought of that. But Hunt came in to supposedly help with Daniel Ellsberg. That was the start. He joined the Plumbers, and then they got this other fellow named Gordon Liddy, who was an ex-Treasury agent that they liked to use for usually for firearms policy and other things, FBI stuff. He was a former agent. So that's the way the Plumbers got their start. But soon, Liddy moved over to the campaign, and he became the general counsel of the campaign, and he was the leader, along with Hunt, of the team that went into the Watergate. At that point, they were no longer with the White House. They were now with the campaign to reelect the president.
Creep. What an appropriate
Exactly.
name.
Creep.
The committee to elect the president. So,
Right.
so as you say, 1972, Nixon seeking reelection. The committee to reelect the president, or creep. It always struck me as curious. Now when we see the attorney general, there seems to be such a greater distance, certainly with, let's say, Bill Barr and Donald Trump. There's a real division there. But John Mitchell, who was the former attorney general, good friends with Richard Nixon, he resigns to become the chair of his reelection campaign. Was that out of the ordinary? It seems now, in retrospect, that's not something you would expect to see.
Well, it was out of the ordinary, and Mitchell didn't like it. Mitchell sort of fought it. Mitchell goes back. He was a law partner of Richard Nixon, so he's very well trusted. He was a bond lawyer, very much a pillar of the community. Not a skullduggery type of guy, not a bad guy. He did bonds for municipalities that were trying to build sidewalks and bridges. So, but Nixon trusted him. He was his law partner, and Nixon's two henchmen, they used to call them the German shepherds. There were two guys named H.R. Haldeman and John Ehrlichman, who were the president's closest advisors. They didn't like John Mitchell for various reasons. They thought he was their rival because Nixon did trust Mitchell implicitly, and he was a very conservative, pipe-smoking guy who really was not one to cater to any of those hijinks that later on came about. One of the great ironies of Watergate is that people associate Mitchell with those hijinks, and that's absolutely not who he is. James Rosen has done a fantastic book on that called Strongman. But Mitchell, and one of the great ironies of history, and there are many in Watergate, he had nothing to do with this, but he was head of creep. And it was odd that he went over there. He was close to Nixon, but in a way, Ehrlichman and Haldeman were banishing him to the campaign. That was their, and they convinced Nixon that he had to have Mitchell over there. Mitchell fought it. He didn't like it. Who wants to run a campaign? That's, buying yard signs and buying ads and doing all the grunt work. He didn't like it. He was a good lawyer, but he did it out of great loyalty to Nixon. And Ehrlichman and Haldeman loved the idea that Mitchell was out there, shoveling the cow pies out of the barnyard where they were in the White House, sipping tea with the president. So that's really the start of this, is what happens as that transition comes about, and all the other things that were going on with the leaks. The White House now knew that they had to investigate the Ellsberg Pentagon Papers deal themselves, that they weren't going to get help from the FBI, which seemed to be slow in it. Again, it was Henry Kissinger. Originally, the Pentagon Papers did not hurt Nixon. The Pentagon Papers hurt Johnson and hurt Kennedy, but did not hurt Nixon. When they first came out, Nixon said, "Hey, this is great. This screws Johnson. Happy, happy." Well, Henry Kissinger was really getting screwed because he was the architect of Vietnam. He was the brilliant guy that had come up with a lot of this stuff, although people didn't realize it at the time, that if you really dig into the Pentagon Papers, it really gets all over Henry Kissinger and his plans. So Henry Kissinger was livid and convinced Nixon that this might be, Ellsberg must be connected to the Soviets, that the Soviets might have had these things, that he was a Soviet agent. And so he got Nixon all riled up. And Nixon, one button you could push with Nixon is say that somebody was tied in with communists. Nixon had been an anti-communist since he was a congressman. He had the famous Alger Hiss case where he outed a communist that was in the State Department. And he was known as being a tough guy against Khrushchev of the Soviet Union. So Kissinger got Nixon all worked up. So then we start forming in the White House and later in the campaign these investigators in a political body. And as my client, Mark Felt, is an FBI agent, he is saying something had to go wrong here. And he tells Woodward and Bernstein this, something had to go wrong here because you are now having investigators in a political organization. And where does the line end between national security, for which all this is okay, and breaking into places okay if you're breaking into Hitler or Stalin or the Weather Underground? It's not okay if you're breaking into a political enemy. So Mark Felt, aka Deep Throat in the FBI, always thought that this thing was doomed for trouble. And Hoover, while Hoover was alive, the head of the FBI, thought that the people that Nixon was bringing into the White House were going to get him into trouble. And they were both very, very correct in their assessments.
Okay, so getting back to CREEP, the Committee to Reelect the President, John Dean, who is a kind of a general counsel or in the White House, he's
the White House counsel when Ehrlichman used to have those duties. And when he got closer and closer to Nixon, and Nixon wanted him always in the Oval Office, Ehrlichman had some minor legal stuff that he used to handle. He's a good lawyer. He handed them off to this young guy from the Justice Department, and it was very much an inflated title. He was named White House counsel, but there are White House counsel that are very important, and there are White House counsel that are just flunkies. Dean was a young flunky who in his book, Blind Ambition, talks about how he tried to go from being a young flunky to a higher guy in the White House. Thus, he was trying to do a lot of things, blind ambition. If we look at the title of his book, on which, for your viewers, the movie Blonde Ambition is named, with Reese Witherspoon. So Dean is a big character here. He's a guy, a striver from the Justice Department that has this overblown title and is trying to move his way up the ranks. So he's another player that we got to look at.
Was he responsible for recommending that G. Gordon Liddy come in and help CREEP do, some dirty tricks on the Democrats?
Oh, absolutely. He was the guy that talked Liddy into coming over from the White House, where he was in this Plumbers unit, which really didn't, it did a little bit of hijinks, but he talked Liddy into coming over on the grounds that if he became CREEP's lawyer, it was really cover for really an intelligence operation. So it was Dean that wanted Liddy to run an intelligence operation. Why? Because guess who was going to control it? from the White House, Dean was pulling the strings on what was going on in the campaign. Mitchell really didn't pay much attention to this security stuff. It was way below his pay grade. Dean, unbeknownst to most people, was really controlling Liddy and Liddy's guy at the CRP, a guy named Jeb Magruder, who was a handsome, do-nothing guy who wouldn't brush his teeth unless somebody told him to. So he was a guy that Dean controlled. So Dean essentially controlled Magruder and Liddy over at the CRP, but nobody knew that.
All right, we're going to take a quick time out. We'll come back. John O'Connor, the author of The Mysteries of Watergate, What Really Happened, as we commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Watergate break-in right here. Don't go anywhere. Back with more in a moment. I call it the miracle molecule, carbon-60 or C60, for my good friends at C60evo.com. And I take a tablespoon every morning. It delivers more than 172 times the power of vitamin C. C60 is a known antiviral, antioxidant, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory. It's a remedy that works. C60 Evo users consistently enjoy better sleep and wake up feeling refreshed. This alone is worth the cost of the bottle. I sleep like a baby. I have no aches or pains, zero. I'm 58 and I don't have a gray hair on my head. Get your miracle in a bottle, C60, from c60evo.com/Richard-Syrett. c60evo.com/Richard-Syrett. Use the coupon code EVRS at checkout and save an additional 10%. This statement has not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. If you have a medical concern, please contact your healthcare provider. Have you subscribed to my newsletter yet? It's fast, easy, and absolutely free. Just go to my website, strangeplanet.ca, strangeplanet.ca, and then click on subscribe. All I need is your email address, and that's it. Then, once a month, you'll receive my newsletter, Inner Sanctum, in your email inbox. The Inner Sanctum contains a monthly brief, a column of my analysis of the news and opinions. There's a This Month in UFO or Conspiracy History, a look ahead to an upcoming episode of this radio program, a book club, my podcast pick of the month, a spotlight on a previous guest, and much more. Join the Strange Planet community by signing up for your free subscription to Inner Sanctum. Again, go to strangeplanet.ca, strangeplanet.ca, and click on subscribe. It's a strange planet. Read all about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has turned on the fasten seatbelt sign. We're now crossing a zone of turbulence. Please return your seats and food trays to their upright position and make sure your carry-on luggage is safely stowed. You're about to leave everything you know behind. This is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. Strange Planet.
There's been a break-in at Democratic headquarters, and they were bugging the place. Woodward, Bernstein, you're both on the story now. Don't up.
Redford.
I'm Bob Woodward of the Washington Post. Mr. Markham, are you here in connection with the Watergate burglary?
I'm not here.
Hoffman.
Hi, this is Carl Bernstein of the Washington Post, and I was just wondering if you can remember...
All the President's Men. The story of the two young reporters who cracked the Watergate conspiracy.
White House.
Howard Hunt, please.
He might be in Mr. Colson's office.
Who's Charles Colson? Did you know, Howard Hunt?
Well, the White House said he was doing some investigative work.
What do you say?
They stumbled into leads.
Certainly it comes as no surprise to you that Howard was with the CIA.
No surprise at all.
They tripped over clues.
We'd like to see all the material requested by the White House.
All White House transactions are confidential.
This whole thing is a cover-up. It's right on our nose.
And piece by piece, they solved the greatest detective story in American history.
There is no way the White House can control the investigation.
I don't want to say anymore, okay?
Have you been threatened if you tell the truth?
Is there a cover-up?
Don't you understand what you're on to?
Mitchell knew?
Of course, Mitchell knew.
Woodward! Bernstein! Get in here!
At times, it looked as if it might cost them their jobs.
You guys are about to write a story that says the former Attorney General, the highest-ranking law enforcement officer in this country, is a crook.
Their reputations.
Why is the Post trying to do it? I don't know.
Perhaps even their lives.
There you go. Welcome back. And John O'Connor is with us as we commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Watergate break-ins this week, actually. And his brand new book is The Mysteries of Watergate, What Really Happened, which is also, coincidentally, not really, the name of his podcast, The Mysteries of Watergate. We just heard coming back there the trailer for that classic. I think that came out in 1976. All the President's Men just won like a truckload of Academy Awards. Just a wonderful piece of movie making. We were talking about John Dean, and he's the one that I guess convinces Mitchell to bring G. Gordon Liddy on board. And I don't know if this is true or apocryphal, but G. Gordon Liddy makes this presentation. I don't know, he's got like a whiteboard and he's running down his this Operation Gemstone, all these dirty tricks that he wants to employ. You know, we'll get a big boat full of beautiful hookers and we'll invite the Democrats on and we'll get pictures of them in compromising positions. And I think, you know, according to the story, Mitchell was just like, wow, who is this, you know, guy? This guy's crazy. I don't want to see him again. Is that true? Did he propose all these dirty tricks?
Yeah, well, first of all, it was Dean who, as we talked about earlier, had lured Liddy over to the CRP. All Mitchell wanted was a lawyer to handle. There was a new disclosure law in which you now had to start disclosing who contributed to the campaign, and there were different timing issues on it, and you needed a lawyer. So that's all Mitchell wanted, was he wanted a lawyer to handle the grunt work. Dean said, "Oh, this is a cover to you, Gordon. You're going to act like you're the lawyer, but you're really going to do this intelligence operation. We need a really ramped up intelligence, and you'll have a budget of $500,000 for openers, $500,000, which in those days was huge." And so Liddy thought he was going to be a big intelligence guy. He had been an FBI agent in the past, was influenced by Howard Hunt when he was over at the White House into cloak and dagger things. He thought he really wanted to do anything in the world. Liddy was a little bit crazed. He had very much of a militaristic, Teutonic love of all things German, and he was crazed and even named a lot of his operations after Hitler's operations. You can't make this up. But he came up, the first meeting was, I think, January 27th. Mitchell was still Attorney General, and they met in Mitchell's office. And appropriately, he had the CIA prepare these fancy charts of his proposals of all these things, kidnapping protesters, drugging them, doing all kinds of things. It was crazed. And, even at one point, Liddy talked about how he could get guys from organized crime to kidnap and drug these people. And that was going to cost a lot of money, though. And Mitchell puffed on his pipe. He was a very dry, stone-faced guy. And he said, "Well, Gordon, let's not contribute any more to organized crime than we need to. Thank you very much. And oh, Gordon, by the way, will you burn these charts?" And that was the end of it. Mitchell thought he'd done with that. A week later, they had another meeting. So Dean is telling Liddy, "Oh, don't worry. It just costs too much. It costs too much. Pare the thing down and come back next week." So he did that. He pared it down. This time he didn't have his CIA charts. He just had a sheaf of paper. But once again, the proposals were outrageous. One of the proposals originally was to have a chase plane follow a plane of a Democratic official so that they could wiretap the plane. In other words, if you get close enough to another plane, you can wiretap the plane. It was silly stuff. And once again, Liddy, Mitchell was so disturbed by it, and Dean could say that Dean ended the meeting. Dean was at both meetings. He'll now try to claim that he was, Johnny, a Boy Scout caught in bad company, but he was behind all this. So anyway, at some point it became clear that Mitchell wasn't buying what Liddy was selling, and Liddy had no emotional IQ. And so Dean ends the meeting. Liddy is furious with him because Dean's not supporting him. Magruder's not supporting him. Why not? Well, obviously, it looks like this is killed. Later on, a couple of months later, Magruder reports that Mitchell had okayed the intelligence project, whatever that means. In fact, within a couple of months, they had a new budgeting structure in which Magruder was simply given budget items, and he had to determine what was spent within those items. And he realized he really didn't need approval for something like this. He had an intelligence budget. So he told people that Mitchell had approved it. I do not believe that Mitchell ever approved it. Mitchell and his assistant said that he never approved it. It was on an agenda item. And it wasn't even clear that the project that Liddy proposed 2 months later, that Magruder put 2 months later, would even specified what was going to be done under this project. But anyway, there's a he said, she said on whether that project was ever approved. And Magruder later claimed that Mitchell had told him to go into the Watergate, that he had specifically told him that. I will tell you this, I don't believe it. Most people don't believe it that know anything about this. This is an invention of Magruder. Now, one of the ways Liddy talks about in his book, and I'll get you and just your audience into a little detail. There's so much fascinating detail here. Liddy was big on using prostitutes. He loved this. All this stuff is in their own fevered imagination. Mitchell is not asking for this, but he loved using prostitutes to get information from Democrats. So they were going to hire all these prostitutes in Miami where the convention was. And this whole thing was to focus on Miami and to try to get information from the Democrats. Silly. But and all Mitchell cared about was not having demonstrators at the Republican convention that was going to be in Miami. Anyway, one of the things that Magruder kept bugging Mitchell for, kept bugging Liddy for, was, gee, can't we bring the prostitutes up to Washington so we can try them out? Richard, I'm not lying about this. And Liddy writes about in his book, and as he said, importing whores to Washington, D.C. is like importing cars to Detroit. We have plenty of them here already, but he said once he finally gave in to Magruder, who he hated, once he gave in to Magruder, said, okay, Gordon, or okay, Jeb, you can sample the wares. I'll bring a girl or two up here and you can sample the wares. And he said the look on Magruder's face was such that he said, somehow I know Magruder's going to get approval for this project. Okay. So I think what happened was he started getting flack from Liddy. Liddy sort of ratted out him to, Liddy ratted out Magruder to Colson, Charles Colson, a White House guy who then called up Magruder and said, why isn't this thing getting done? So I think Magruder felt the pressure to have this project approved. He wanted Dean's approval. So it got approved. And somehow this thing got steered to the Watergate in DC, not in Miami now. All the plans had been to protect things in Miami on either of the two conventions. Now they're in Washington, DC. And Liddy, who has the money, you need money, Liddy, because he's the general counsel who's got a bag of money. And Liddy could never figure out why they would go in to the DNC. He said, this is a worthless target. Liddy wanted intelligence. He wanted to do all these break-ins and find out intelligence. He thought that Mitchell was behind it. Mitchell wasn't, that Mitchell was all for it. He thought he was pleasing his boss. He was pleasing John Dean, really. But anyway, he couldn't figure out why they were going into the DNC. It made no sense. There was nothing of value there. Nothing was going on. There was no intelligence to be gained. And he was going to blow through some of his budget. He only had so much money in his intelligence budget. So now we have Liddy finally saying, okay, we'll go along, we'll break into the Watergate and we'll do this wiretapping. He was told, Richard, now I'm going to get into the weeds here a little bit just to tell, because
we've got about a minute here, and then we'll come back.
Okay. He was told that they were going to tap the DNC director named Larry O'Brien. Okay, and that was their target. That's the only thing that made any ounce of sense anyway. And we'll come back to this after the break, but that itself was absurd. The whole thing that they were telling Liddy was absurd, because you will find cross currents of lies and secret agendas throughout Watergate. There isn't one massive plan top down. It's a bunch of different fiefdoms and agendas all lying to one another. And we can talk about this after the break.
Right. And as we'll learn, I mean, we talk about the 50th anniversary being June 17th when they arrested the burglars at like 2:30 in the morning. But I mean, that was the second break-in. They broke in late May and kind of bungled that and had to go back in. We'll pick it up on the other side. U.S. Attorney John O'Connor, the author of a brand new one called The Mysteries of Watergate, What Really Happened, as we continue to commemorate the 50th anniversary of one of the great scandals of all time, Watergate. Stay with us. A trusted sponsor of my show, GetTheTea.com, is having their summer sale. Hey guys, let's talk about Father's Day. What kind of gift would you like to give your dad? Why not think about a gift that would help his digestion? Remember, Life Change Tea is an amazing, gentle cleanse that he can use daily for gut health. Who doesn't need that? I know I do. I drink it every day. It comes in 3 different flavors: natural, peppermint, and my favorite, pomegranate. You need to try it. The combination of 12 herbs just does a beautiful number on my insides. Right now, they're having their big summer sale. Buy 3, get 1 free. That's right, buy 3, get 1 free. Life Change Tea is not a fad. They've been around since 2007, helping thousands of people, and it's made right in the USA. It's easy to brew, keep it in your fridge, and you drink it daily. It's summertime, and I always want to have a big glass of iced tea. That's why I drink Life Change Tea. Buy now and get 1 month of tea for free. Go to getthetea.com/Richard to order yours today. Use the code Richard10 to get an additional $10 off plus free shipping. That's over $50 in savings. Again, that's getthetea.com/Richard and use the code Richard and the number 10, Richard10 for $10 more plus free shipping. Don't miss out. You can become an official Patreon supporter of my work here at Strange Planet Productions by donating a monthly amount through patreon.com/Strange Planet. Patreon.com/Strange Planet. There are several tiers to choose from. Pick which one is right for you, but any monthly amount is greatly appreciated. As a sign of my appreciation, you can have your name mentioned on air during my weekly radio show, or you could have your name included in a crawl on my YouTube channel live stream. You could also receive episodes of my old podcast, The Rock and Roll Twilight Zone. This critically acclaimed podcast, produced in partnership with Chris Jericho, is not currently available anywhere else. If you enjoy this podcast or my weekly radio program, The Conspiracy Show, you can really get behind me and my work by donating once a month at patreon.com/Strange Planet. Patreon.com/Strange Planet.
As you're staring up at the night sky, ever wonder who's staring back? You're listening to Richard Syrett's Strange Planet.
You let Haldeman slip away.
Yes.
You've done worse than let Haldeman slip away, get people feeling sorry for him. I didn't think that was possible. In a conspiracy like this, you build from the outer edges and you go step by step. If you shoot too high and miss, everybody feels more secure. You put the investigation back months.
Yes, we know that. And if we're wrong, we're resigning. Were we wrong?
You'll have to find that out, won't you?
Listen, I'm tired of your games. I don't want hints. I need to know what you know.
It was a Haldeman operation. The whole business was run by Haldeman, the money, everything. It won't be easy getting at him. He was insulated. You'll have to find out how.
There you go, another clip from All the President's Men. Robert Redford as Washington Post journalist Bob Woodward, Dustin Hoffman as Washington Post reporter Carl Bernstein, and the great late Hal Holbrook playing Deep Throat, feeding these Washington Post reporters all this information regarding Watergate and the ensuing cover-up. John O'Connor is with us, U.S. Attorney, represented Deep Throat, who was later identified about 3 decades later as W. Mark Felt, who was Deputy Director of the FBI, and John's brand new book, The Mysteries of Watergate, What Really Happened. So we're talking about sort of the lead up to the break-in. And I mentioned before the break, there was actually a break-in, was it May 28th, I think, of 1972?
Right. That weekend, around May 28th to May 30th, they had an abortive original attempt, I think, on May 28th. You're correct on that, Richard. I might not have been to the 29th or 30th that they actually made it in and installed some wiretaps. Now, interestingly, here's where things get good for your audience. everyone has thought, and Liddy himself was told, that the break-in target was the phone or room of Larry O'Brien, the director of the DNC. Now that's somewhat logical. If this is going to be a campaign intelligence operation, the only guy in the DNC that might know anything is Larry O'Brien, because he's a muckety muck. He talks to a lot of people. The DNC had no real campaign authority at the time, but one can say, okay, maybe they're listening to O'Brien because O'Brien had so much inside knowledge of things. It's been speculated, for instance, that O'Brien knew the inside track to a billionaire, Howard Hughes, who had funneled cash to Nixon, got discovered and probably helped Kennedy beat him in 1960, that Hughes was probably funneling money to Nixon again. Maybe that's what they're looking for, and so forth. What does he know, and so forth. But as it turns out, Richard, Larry O'Brien wasn't in town. He hadn't been in town for weeks. He wasn't going to be in town for weeks. He was going to be traveling around the country, going to conventions. And so they told Liddy that they're going to put in this super sophisticated $30,000 room bug that was undetectable, and they're going to put it in O'Brien's office. Liddy gives that his $30,000 to one of the CIA guys, James McCord, that was now infiltrating the campaign. And he thinks he's getting a bug in Larry O'Brien's office. He can't figure out why they're doing it. He doesn't think this is a good idea. Why are we blowing our budget like this? But okay, I'll do it. Now, as it turns out, the burglars for those 2 weeks before the arrests were not listening to Larry O'Brien. They were listening on the phone of a minor official that wasn't even with the DNC. He was with an affiliated Democratic group called the Association of Democratic Chairmen, where he was dealing with the Democratic chairman of Montana, of Idaho, whoever. And he had a large suite of offices because he was essentially an entertainment guy. People would come in, they'd use his suite of offices. He was often on travel. His secretary would take care of him. They'd use the offices and the phones. And that's who they were listening to, was the phone of the guy that was traveling around.
So there's no useful intel there if you're trying to, defeat the Democrats in the upcoming campaign. You're not getting anything useful.
Nothing. There was no chance that you were going to get anything useful. And the guy's name was Spencer Oliver Jr. He was a minor official, like I say, globe-trotted around. So what was it they were getting at? And it turns out they did not wiretap Larry O'Brien, even though McCord told them that they had wiretapped O'Brien. But gosh, the bug didn't work. The 30,000 bug that I spent so much money on, gosh, it was shielded by concrete and steel. The signal must not be getting through. I'm sorry about that, Gordon. Gosh, what happened? But meanwhile, they're listening to this minor official, and they have a monitor that's listening all day. Now, here's what the Post knows, but the Republicans don't find out. The monitor, after the arrest, the monitor comes to the Republicans and says, please give me a lawyer. I want a lawyer. The Republicans said, oh no, you don't. We don't know that you're with us. We want to disclaim any responsibility for us. Go get your own lawyer. Now, why do I say this, Richard? This is one of the dumbest mistakes a lawyer could ever confront. You have some...
John, pardon the interruption. We're going to be a cliffhanger here. We're going to find out exactly what happened in a few moments. We'll take a quick time out. John O'Connor, the author of The Mysteries of Watergate, What Really Happened. Also, check out the podcast, The Mysteries of Watergate. You can get that at, you can listen and subscribe at postgatebook.com, postgatebook.com. Back with more of my conversation with John O'Connor right after these. Guys, we've seen so many people making ridiculous money from crypto, but did you know it's easy for you to do the same? The Copy My Crypto membership site shows you the coins that the YouTuber James McMahon personally holds and allows you to copy him. It's like having a big brother who knows what he's doing. You don't need to know a thing about crypto or how to invest, as you simply do what he does. So let me tell you more about James. He runs the Crypto with James YouTube channel, which, despite heavy censorship, has over 17,000 subscribers and 1 million views. Since March 2020, he's told his viewers to buy 26 crypto coins. Had you put in $100 into each one, it would now be worth over $53,000. Of the 26 coins, his top pick of the year, a coin called Phantom, is currently up over 440 times from when he said to buy. That one call alone has retired a number of people, including guys in their 20s and 30s. Remember, this is public knowledge. You can go to YouTube and verify this for yourself. So if you'd like to join the 1,300 members who copy James, then stop what you're doing and head over to copymycrypto.com/dollar. copymycrypto.com/dollar. That's DOLLAR. You'll not only find proof of everything I've said, but listeners get full access for just $1. You can't find this offer anywhere else, but act fast because the offer ends soon. That's copymycrypto.com/dollar. That's DOLLAR. Don't take this offer lightly. He's the real deal. Go visit the site now. If you're a fan of this radio program and the Strange Planet podcast, why not show it off by wearing Strange Planet apparel or drinking from a Strange Planet mug? Check out all the great Strange Planet merch in my Strange Planet shop. Just go to the website, strangeplanet.ca, and click on Shop in the menu. There's a huge selection of men's and women's t-shirts. You like crop circles or the Mayan calendar? Got you covered. Are you into the Anunnaki? Wait till you see these designs. My favorite right now, lions do not lose sleep over the opinions of sheep. And one of our best sellers right now, Truth Gets You Crucified on the front, and a passage from Matthew chapter 23 on the back. So many great t-shirt designs, I don't know where to begin. There's women's leggings and tote bags, and of course, mugs. Great gifts for family and friends who listen and love this show. My Strange Planet shop. Visit today and often. Just go to strangeplanet.ca and check it out.
The truth will set you free. But first, it will really tick you off. Welcome back to Richard Syrett's Strange Planet.
Mitchell started doing covert stuff before anyone else. The list is longer than anyone can imagine. It involves the entire U.S. intelligence community, FBI, CIA, Justice. It's incredible. Cover-up had little to do with Watergate. It was mainly to protect the covert operations. It leads everywhere. Get out your notebook. There's more. Your lives are in danger.
There you go. Deep Throat once again from the movie All the President's Men. John O'Connor stays with us. The Mysteries of Watergate, What Really Happened, the brand new book. Incidentally, when is that available? Is it out now?
It is out just now, and you can order it on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. We made a deal with those two. They're the only ones that can sell it. They wanted an exclusive, so we've done that. So for better or for worse, I'm not here making the decisions, and the publisher thinks it's a great idea. So Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com, and of course you can order through Barnes and Noble, one of the stores, and they'll ship it to you. So it really is the most complete rendering of what really happened. I try to do it in very plain spoken words. I'm going through a lot of complication here because it takes a while to unwind it. In the book, I go through it in very simple, easy to digest steps, so you understand at each stage what happens, and also why you don't know, why you don't learn, why the public never learned about what I was saying. And I explained that as we go along. Why is it that the public didn't know this? Why didn't the public know that? So one of the things, Richard, I'd like to get back to is, and maybe I left a cliffhanger there and I can come back to the cliffhanger about the monitor. But when there was an arrest, we all know from the movie that the guard uncovered the tape on the door. Remember, we talked about that.
Yeah, Frank Wills.
Yeah. Now, why? And it was the second time he discovered tape. Now, I asked the audience, that tape is on there only to gain entrance. In other words, the lock allows you to get in from the outside, the tape lock. You don't need it to exit a building. We all know that. Anytime there's a fire door, you can just push it. You can't get in from outside. So with all the burglars in, why was the tape still on? the guy, the leader, an experienced CIA guy who supposedly had retired, James McCord,
yeah,
told them that he had removed the tape. And in fact, he had removed the tape from that lock or several other floors up above, including the 6th floor. Why would he leave the tape on when it was only there to gain entrance, not exit? And that's one of the cliffhangers I'll leave for you there. And there's an answer to that, but I will leave your audience in limbo there. Let me talk about another aspect of this that is never reported. One of the most important things you could do in reporting on the arrest is to tell the reader where they were in the Watergate when they were caught. They were caught with a bunch of cameras for documents, some wiretapping equipment. What was it they were doing? If you knew where they were, you would get the target of the burglary. Now, the Washington Post went to all kinds of detail to talk about the bills they had, the tear gas pens, the rubber gloves. It looked like it was this wonderful, complete reporting. But what they never told you was the most important thing they could have told you, which is what part of the offices were they in? They were in the part of the offices that housed the guy that they were listening to. I told you before, Spencer Oliver Jr., far away from Larry O'Brien's office. So first of all, they had been listening for 2 weeks to this phone, and now they're in that part of the office looking for things and with cameras out to copy documents. The Post never told us what part of the office they were in. They'd already opened some file drawers. They had already set up cameras. Why wouldn't they tell us? Because what I'm telling you, and I go through this in my book, that would tell the real target that it really wasn't Larry O'Brien. It was something else. And why were they listening to him, Spencer Oliver Jr., and why were they near his secretary and all his secretary's files? What was that about? That is what Watergate was. Now, here we are 50 years later, and people are telling us that this was all about Nixon winning and wanting campaign information. Whereas right now, we've been talking here for a few minutes, there was no campaign operation. They weren't looking for campaign information. It's very clear. And that could have come out the very first day after the arrest.
Well, a couple of things. We should point out that so that first break-in that occurred around the 28th, 29th, or 30th, or whatever it was in May, and I guess ostensibly, well, we have to go back in because they didn't bug O'Brien's room. So I guess that was the excuse to go back in. Let's do it right this time. Is it
right? There were two things involved. First of all, Liddy was under the impression that the bug wasn't working because it was shielded by concrete and steel. We had a $30,000 bug. Remember that?
Yeah.
He never bought a $30,000 bug. Okay, that was a false story to Liddy. But he tells Liddy, okay, well, if Liddy wants, the CIA didn't want to go in a second time, by the way, because they'd already accomplished their mission of getting authority, as Deep Throat said in that clip. They're worried about mainly to protect the covert operations. This was part for the CIA of getting presidential approval for all their illegal operations, including this and many others. They could show that the White House approved this, then they could get a get out of jail card free for all the other stuff that they'd been doing. But in any case, one of the things that they were going to do was they told Liddy they were going to fix the $30,000 bug. So what happened is McCord went out and got a cheapo bug that cost $102 or something, and he was going to put it in a smoke detector near O'Brien's room, and that was going to transmit. They figured that eventually the Democrats would find the bug because these people sweep all the time. It was a simple bug, but he was going to put one in so at least Liddy could see that a bug had been fixed, you see. And so that's what they were going to do to solve that part. But the main part of the mission was not to fix the bug. It was to find out what oppo dirt the Democrats had on the Republicans. So when Liddy goes in a second time, Magruder slams his hand on the lower left-hand drawer, desk drawer, and says, "We want what they have there." Liddy understood that's where the Republicans kept their oppo dirt on the other side. They wanted what the Democrats had on them. The second one. So the first burglary was cast as we're going to get stuff from them. The second one was more defensive. We're going to find out what they have on us. And so they're going in to photograph all these voluminous files, and they're going to find out what's in those files. And guess where the files are? The files are at the secretary's area of the fellow that's being wiretapped. Now, why would they care about his files and his secretary's files? Why would they care about that? This is what your audience needs to know about this. If you locate the target and figure out what's at the target, then you will find out what was going on here. Now, in order to find out what the target is, what's the other thing you would do besides knowing the location of the office? You had been listening to phone calls for 2 weeks. You would want to know what the monitor was listening to for 2 weeks, right? So if you know the part of the office that they're looking documents for, where they're looking for documents, and if you find out what the monitor has been listening to for 2 weeks, you will say, we know what they were doing here. Now, the Republicans have the opportunity to find out what was going on here, because really, Gordon Liddy never really knew what was going on. He was fooled. The White House didn't know anything about this. This was just this little group of people, including the CIA and Dean and Magruder. Now, what is it they were looking for? Well, you had that opportunity when they find the monitor, the guy that had been listening to the wiretap information and been writing stuff down. They didn't record it. It turns out that the Republicans won't represent him, as I told you. If you are a big drug captain and your mules get caught, what is the first rule of criminal defense? The first 3 rules are hire them lawyers, and hire them lawyers. And you do that so that they stay in the corral with you and you know what they're talking about and they don't snitch on you and so forth. The Republicans could have found out what this guy was listening to, but they thought it'd be really good to just separate themselves from the monitor. So they said, you're not on our payroll. We don't see you on our payroll. You were paid by McCord. You weren't paid by the campaign. We don't have to defend you. So they didn't give him a lawyer. Well, he finds a Democratic lawyer that's tied in with the DNC. And this guy wants to be a judge. The DNC's lawyer is a big hot shot in DC who ended up making him a judge, by the way, as a result of this. But within a few days, everyone knows what is going on, what they were listening to. They were listening to naughty boys from out of town, visiting these offices, talking to naughty girls down the street. Okay? So the monitor knows this. The Democrats who weren't aware of this operation now knew about the operation. I don't think every Democrat knew what was going on here. This out-of-town help the visitors operation. The CIA knew about it. And so the Washington Post knows about this. They know what they're listening to. The Democrats, of course, know. And they know the location of where everything is. The Post knows that. They don't tell the reader. So pretty soon, the Democrats and the Post both know what's going on here. And guess what? Guess who doesn't know? The White House. The White House can't figure out what happened here. It made no sense to anybody.
Okay.
John Nixon. Okay.
We're going to have to stop right there. We're going to pick this up on the hour 2 coming up. John O'Connor stays with us. Deep Throat's attorney and the author of The Mysteries of Watergate. What really happened? Barnes & Noble, Amazon. Stay with us.
Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. Following the truth wherever it leads. Exposing evil and corruption and the secret machinations of powerful elites. Revealing the high strangeness beneath the surface of our supposed reality. Coming to you from the Great White North and his studio beneath the stairs. Here's Richard.
Thanks for inviting me into your home. Your long-haul truck, RV, camper, taxi, your parents' well-appointed basement with the simulated wood paneling, electric fireplace, and the painting of dogs playing poker. Your loft, that greasy spoon just off the interstate, and your cabin in the woods. Ryan White is our live stream producer. Carlos Cagina, our technical producer. Check out my YouTube and Rumble channels, Strange Planet. John O'Connor stays with us as we commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Watergate break-ins back on June 17th of 1972. Several burglars arrested in the office of the Democratic National Committee, located, of course, in the Watergate complex of buildings in Washington, D.C. And this was, of course, no ordinary robbery, as John has been telling us. The prowlers were connected to President Richard Nixon's reelection campaign, and they had been caught wiretapping phones and stealing documents. And the ensuing attempted cover-up of the break-in led to President Nixon's eventual resignation in April of 1974. President Gerald Ford called it the Great National Nightmare. John O'Connor is the author of The Mysteries of Watergate, What Really Happened. John, so it sounds like you were describing, it almost sounded like some sort of a call girl ring happening inside the DNC, or am I like way off base here?
Well, it was a call girl referral operation. The people down the street, there was a very vibrant, busy, high-class call girl ring going down in the apartments right down the street. And the CIA was protecting the call girl ring. The CIA was already taping the prostitutes and their johns at that call girl ring. Very prestigious clientele at the call girl ring.
Like a honey trap.
A honey trap, exactly. Some used very much for extortion. If you're a Chilean ambassador and you use that place, the CIA tapes you, perhaps photographs you, they at least were taping you, they've got you. You know, you better start giving the beans to them, or your wife is going to know, that the government's going to know, everybody's going to know, and they've got you. Also, there was some at other operations, I don't know if at this one, but they would also sometimes drug johns, but that's another matter. That's some of the stuff they were doing at other places, I think. But here, I think it was more just extortion, a honeypot, honey trap. But it was illegal. If they got caught doing it, it was illegal. And the Deep Throat tape that you played was talking about that. These were covert operations the CIA could not possibly have discovered. If they understood what was going on for decades, everybody in the CIA was going to jail. So the CIA had to cover this up. They had every motive to cover this up. Now, what's interesting is the Post did too, because their twin sister, their Siamese twin, is the DNC. They were very close to them. The Post had started its business as the proud organ of the Democratic Party in 1877. Their relationship with the DNC in 1972 was very close. They shared a general counsel. So when your lawyer is there representing both of you at the same time, you're joined at the hip. That's as close as you can get. And of course, the lawyer who was representing them himself was a big Democrat, Joseph Califano. He had been in LBJ's cabinet. He was with the most prestigious Democratic firm in town. These were the power brokers. So basically, what I'm telling you is, Richard, the Post knew just about everything right away. The White House did not, okay? Now, the other thing we've talked about before, we talked about the honey pots and so forth. One of the things that the White House knew is from the monitor what they were listening to, and he talked about how they were listening to explicitly intimate, embarrassing sexual conversations.
Which had nothing to do with the Democrats' campaign in the upcoming presidential election.
Right, exactly, nothing to do with that. And so you have that aspect of things. Now, the other thing that the Post knew very soon was that the CIA was involved. And we know this from CIA documents that brag about how the Woodward had agreed to protect the CIA's cover company. Now, I don't know how many of the audience remembers the Valerie Plame fiasco with Scooter Libby, where anyway, CIA officers, when they go to another country, always work under a cover company. They're working for, Apex International and act like they have some job and they're really an agent. Okay. This CIA does this all over the world. They have people undercover just routinely. Well, this company in Washington, D.C., that Howard Hunt, one of the burglars, worked for, he worked for them full-time and part-time for the White House. He worked for a cover company, which means that he's probably, and he had retired, supposedly retired from the CIA, He was undercover. Okay, and he was working at the White House undercover. The Post knew that almost immediately, that this was a cover company, and yet they did not tell the public that.
We should, if I could just interject, just to give listeners some context. My understanding is, so these Washington Post reporters, Bernstein and Woodward, they discover, or there was a check apparently in one of the burglars' pocket that was signed by E. Howard Hunt. So then when they find out Hunt works for the CIA, that's at least that's the narrative in All the President's Men. That's
the White House. No, for the White House. They learned that he worked for the White House.
Right.
In other words, they discovered the check with Howard Hunt has made a $6.16 check made out to his country club. Then Woodward is told by Deep Throat that one of the burglars had his phone number with WH next to it. Sounds like White House. Woodward calls that number, and it's the switchboard of the White House. And so Woodward is blown away. I mean, this is very exciting. There's no doubt it's exciting stuff. Here's a guy caught. It's Howard Hunt, and he's across the hotel, and they think they've gotten out of there. And it turns out one of the burglars betrays him. It's very sloppy, covert practice. But nonetheless, Woodward then calls up that Monday, I think, and gets Howard Hunt at the White House, and Hunt is just blown away that Woodward's got his name. And so, he said something like, "Good God." And so you can't make this up. So now Woodward is really on something, and I understand why. And it looks like it's a big breakthrough. One of the burglars works at the White House. So it looks like everything looks like, and then one of the guys that gets discovered is this G. Gordon Liddy, who works for the campaign as the lawyer for the campaign. So you have a guy from the White House running this and a guy from the campaign running this. So it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, waddles like a duck. It looks like the Nixon administration has just burgled the DNC, and they had. Now the question is, who authorized it, how far down it went, and why they were doing it. Once you get into those details, the story changes. But if you look at it facially, boy, this is a great plot for a movie. You can't make it up. And that's why All the President's Men is a wonderful movie. It's my favorite movie. And yet I know now a lot of it is untrue, or at least the implications are untrue. But some of these facts cannot be denied. The CRP, the Committee to Re-elect the President, is involved in this. A White House consultant is involved in this. It's against the Democrats, right? As the convention is coming up and an election is coming up. It's an election year. The campaign cash, they soon find out, is used to finance this thing. So for somebody like me, I'm a beginning lawyer in San Francisco. I say, oh my God, the White House did this. Let's go after the White House. Come on, you guys. And but the public seemed somewhat uninterested for a while. It was okay. They thought it was just another little thing. Okay, big deal. The White House called it a third-rate burglary. Nobody, Richard, in the public was really too bent out of shape by this. I was, because I wanted to be a prosecutor. I thought there were a million federal crimes here. But the public was not interested. And then all of a sudden, these headlines in October of '72, 5 months after the burglary, the thing exploded. I was blown away. I was following this every day. And all of a sudden you get this reporting that Watergate is really part of a bigger campaign of spying and sabotage. Now, the facts of this burglary seem like, oh my God, there's something sinister going on here. What's going on? And we're kept in suspense. We don't know, as part of the public, what's going on here. So it is really a very, very engaging deal when you are someone like me. And I think I'm an intelligent observer. I've been to law school. I'm going to be a prosecutor. I'm a practicing lawyer. My dad was involved in politics. This is right up my alley. My dad's partner was in the Nixon administration. So I look at this and I think this is just incredible. Now, and then slowly, as this sensational reporting gets more and more sensational, things start to crack. But before, as it turns out, the key explosive reporting came when my client, Mark Felt, went into the garage with Bob Woodward. And that's the movie that makes it so interesting, because this whole thing exploded because of that first garage meeting. And Deep Throat sat on the floor with Woodward for 7 hours to try to tie everything together. He needed to do this so the Post would publish the story. My client wanted the story published because the FBI felt like they were being unduly restricted in the investigation, and they were. Felt was trying to get public pressure just to let them do what they need to do and let the chips fall where they may. My client was not, actually, he liked Richard Nixon, was not anti-Nixon, thought Nixon was good on law and order. He was not trying to get rid of Nixon. He was, as some people posit, that, oh, he's just a guy that was out to knife him. No, he felt that his bureau was being obstructed in what they could do. And much like I wish somebody would have come out when Hillary Clinton was making these deals with Russia on the uranium, but nobody came out. It never got publicized, so nobody's the wiser. So what he did was really very much heroic. He was taking a chance with his job, but he felt he had to do it. He knew that it didn't look good for an FBI agent to be going to a garage with a reporter, but he had to explain to Woodward what was up. And Woodward was not a real quick study on this, and nobody in the Post was. They didn't get it. They didn't get what Felt was telling them, and he had to sit down and step by step take them through it.
Spoon feed them. Okay, I want to. So many amazing threads here. I don't know if you've seen it. I just finished watching. It's a 7-part series and done, which I like, these little mini series on Amazon Prime. Called Gaslit, with Julia Roberts playing Martha Mitchell, the wife of former Attorney General John Mitchell. Sean Penn is amazing. He's unrecognizable as John Mitchell. And Shea Wiggum is brilliant as G. Gordon Liddy. At turns, he's comical and then terrifying, as Liddy was. I mean, he was clownish, but he was also scary. So it's an amazing cast, but they make McCord look like a complete buffoon. Liddy is over the top, and he was over the top, but they make McCord look like the complete buffoon. And the reason he had to put the tape back on in this version is he forgot something. They get inside, and then he realizes, oh, I didn't bring the wiretap or whatever it was. So he has to exit the building, and then he puts the tape back on. So I don't know if that is what happened. But the fact that they made them all look like, and E. Howard Hunt, they made him look like a fool as well, clownish, because obviously it's Hollywood and they're all left-leaning Democrats. They want to make these guys look like complete buffoons. But were they?
Well, actually not. The funny thing about it is, now, some of the practices, like leaving, they were very sloppy in their tradecraft. I will say that, like somebody having a check of Howard Hunt, they had their hotel room keys on them. They should have cleaned the burglars of any information so that nobody would know who they were, okay? They wouldn't know where they're staying. They wouldn't be able to search their rooms. All this stuff sort of blew up the whole deal. So that's one thing. The second thing, but remember, because what I'm telling you here is the CIA had infiltrated this, led to one of the biggest mistakes that they fooled Liddy. Liddy was a dupe. He was a crazy man, but he's also a dupe. He was brilliant in some aspects and just off his rocker in others, and just stupid in others.
Right. He thought they were genuinely in there to gather intel on the Dems. He didn't realize that the CIA had other motives.
Yes, and he didn't even realize what information they were seeking. He didn't know. He didn't understand what was really going on. He was being lied to all the time. The first burglary was not about Larry O'Brien. That was a lie to him. The second one, he knew they were trying to get Oppo dirt, but didn't understand what Oppo dirt they were looking for. He thought it was Oppo political dirt, as on the campaign. In fact, it was Oppo dirt. The debt had to do with the whorehouse, with the call girl ring. What did the call girls know about Republicans? Who was using the call girl operation? Okay, but Liddy did not know that. He knew they were going after Oppo dirt. So now, in terms of the bungling of this, when Liddy, when the thing was busted that night, Liddy went home to his wife and said, "I'm going to jail, and I'll tell you why. I'm going to jail because I left on the team James McCord." James McCord was the security director of the campaign to reelect the president. Supposedly, and this shows you the CIA's pernicious infiltration. For 5 months, supposedly, Hunt had been looking for a so-called wireman, the guy to do the wiretapping. There are probably 5,000 retired wiremen in Washington, D.C. from the CIA, and probably 20,000 from other agencies, from the Army. They're all living in D.C. You could have gotten a wireman. But supposedly for 5 months, Hunt was looking for a wireman for Liddy and couldn't find one, so he had to use McCord. Well, McCord was the security director of the CRP, and one part of tradecraft is you always have, you should be double blind, but you should at least be single blind. In other words, double blind means you don't know who's hiring you and so forth. And anyway, now and nobody who arrests you can
right.
connect you.
Not only that, but McCord was very familiar with Martha Mitchell. Martha Mitchell would later recognize the name, right, in the LA Times newspaper. We'll get into that.
Right. So he was, and Martha Mitchell was no fan of his, and he was on the security detail along with this guy, the monitor Baldwin, who both were taking care of Martha Mitchell. But by McCord being on the burglary team, if there was an arrest, it's a shining light on the CRP. Here they're supposed to be devoid of all these identifying characteristics. One guy works for the CRP. They get arrested. Jig is up. Liddy said, boy, I was stupid. I had McCord on the team. Well, the bungling, they make it look like it's bungling, but this isn't bungling, Richard. This has a design to it. McCord has to stay on the team. If you're going to fool your bosses about what's happening, you need somebody on the team to pull all your dirty stunts and to lie to Liddy and to tell him you've wiretapped a guy that you haven't wiretapped, to say that you've bought a device you haven't bought, to say what you're really doing. So you needed McCord on there, and Hunt knew he had to have McCord on there, you see? And so while it looks like it's bungling, it's all a result of the fact that the CIA needed CIA people in there to control things. So and the CIA didn't really care. Well, I don't want to say they didn't care, because they felt they had authorization to do this. They always had a defense that this was an authorized operation by the President of the United States through his agents, because John Dean had approved it, and they'd heard that Mitchell had. Mitchell hadn't, but they thought Mitchell had. Liddy thought Mitchell had approved this. So it looked like it was, for the CIA's purpose, it looks like a presidential authorized national security covert clandestine operation. And that's the way they were always going to defend themselves. So their purposes are not the same as Liddy's. They don't care so much if they get caught. And as a matter of fact, later on, 10 years down the line, when Congress discovers they're doing all this stuff, the CIA can say, well, we had our CIA guy in there, McCord, we had Hunt. The president approved of all this. This is an approved operation. So they even liked the fact that a CIA guy was on the team, because it would help them in their get out of jail card whenever this operation got discovered. And they, of course, the CIA would later use this operation as cleansing other illegal operations. Well, you know, the White House said we could do all this. And so, sure, we went out and we wiretapped 10 other operations, but this was all part of this deal that the White House had authorized. So now, so for example, with Liddy's $30,000, they didn't buy a $30,000 bug. What did they buy? They bought 6 bugs that would uplink to a satellite. Those bugs were still on order when they were arrested. Now, if in the future those bugs showed up someplace else, those bugs would then be identified as being bought by the White House and by campaign money, because you could trace the checks. Those bugs, and I'm giving away some secrets here, but I want people to, fine, I don't care. I want them to read. The book is fascinating. These 6 bugs that were on order uplinked to a satellite. Now, nobody had satellites back in 1972 except the intelligence agencies. And this particular satellite, these bugs were geared to hook up to the CIA satellite that the CIA had. So you could prove that these bugs that were on order were for the CIA. So let's say those 6 bugs later on were planted in 6 different call girl extortion operations. Congress calls you in. No, this is what was authorized. We're supposed to do this all over the place. We told the people in the White House what we were doing, and they authorized this. This is a national security operation because we want to find out who's betraying our country. And the only way we can do it is find out what they're talking about to prostitutes.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. We'll take another quick timeout. John O'Connor, attorney, author of The Mysteries of Watergate. What really happened on this, the 50th anniversary of the Watergate break-in? Back with more in a moment. I call it the miracle molecule, carbon-60 or C60, for my good friends at C60evo.com. And I take a tablespoon every morning. It delivers more than 172 times the power of vitamin C. C60 is a known antiviral, antioxidant, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory. It's a remedy that works. C60 Evo users consistently enjoy better sleep and wake up feeling refreshed. This alone is worth the cost of the bottle. I sleep like a baby. I have no aches or pains. 0. I'm 58 and I don't have a gray hair on my head. Get your miracle in a bottle, C60, from c60evo.com/Richard-Syrett. c60evo.com/Richard-Syrett. Use the coupon code EVRS at checkout and save an additional 10%. This statement has not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. If you have a medical concern, please contact your healthcare provider. Have you subscribed to my newsletter yet? It's fast, easy, and absolutely free. Just go to my website, strangeplanet.ca, strangeplanet.ca, and then click on subscribe. All I need is your email address, and that's it. Then, once a month, you'll receive my newsletter, Inner Sanctum, in your email inbox. The Inner Sanctum contains a monthly brief, a column of my analysis of the news and opinions. There's a This Month in UFO or Conspiracy History, a look ahead to an upcoming episode of this radio program, a book club, my podcast pick of the month, a spotlight on a previous guest, and much more. Join the Strange Planet community by signing up for your free subscription to Inner Sanctum. Again, go to strangeplanet.ca, strangeplanet.ca, and click on subscribe. It's a strange planet. Read all about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has turned on the fasten seatbelt sign. We're now crossing a zone of turbulence. Please return your seats and food trays to their upright position and make sure your carry-on luggage is safely stowed. You're about to leave everything you know behind. This is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. Strange Planet.
Should the Nixon administration be afraid of you?
Well, I think you know the answer to that.
Mitchell.
I've had some disturbing news, sir. Operation Watergate. Security guards busted wide open.
The next 48 hours are gonna be crucial.
I don't know how to put this. We're wondering about your wife.
Y'all gonna just stand around or you wanna ask me some questions?
You work for Martha Mitchell's husband? Yeah. She's completely insane.
Loud mouth.
She's a truth teller.
Unreliable.
I love her.
I told you, no more interviews.
It's a ladies' magazine. I will say how I feel. And if that gets me banned off Air Force One, I will fly commercial. So you were banned from Air Force One. You're good.
You can just keep your mouth shut. We'll be fine.
If the American people knew half of what I do, they wouldn't have much to approve of.
That loudmouth wife of his is becoming too much of a liability.
There you go. That is from Gaslit, a trailer for the Amazon Prime series starring Julia Roberts as Martha Mitchell, Sean Penn as John Mitchell, and Shea Wiggum as G. Gordon Liddy. Now here in this tale, this version, which is Watergate through the eyes of the Mitchells and also John Dean, they seem to be implicating John Mitchell. You're saying really he didn't know. He wasn't really involved.
John Mitchell was not involved at all. He was horrified when he investigated post-burglary arrests, and he called it a chamber of horrors. He was completely straight. He is the most badly maligned person in Watergate. Other people share different levels of guilt about different things that came out at Watergate. He's the only guy that is innocent of all things, and yet, he's getting it. He died a broken man. He said his real problem was the people he chose to be around, and I feel very sorry for him. James Rosen has done a wonderful book called Strong Men. It came out a few years ago, but clearly Mitchell, and I always thought that at the time, even back in the days when I wanted everybody in the Nixon administration to go to jail, I felt even then that the case against Mitchell was extremely weak. And if it hadn't been for all the Watergate furor, he should have walked. But nonetheless, I'm sure the show is good and it's got good actors. And I think you're right. The makeup they use on Sean Penn is just stunning. Martha Mitchell, of course, the mouth of the South, as they called her, was a person who was kind of a lively person who was fond of the drink, as we say in Ireland. And, and so she had good instincts that her husband certainly felt under siege once these arrests occurred. And she, of course, recognized the shadowy figure of McCord. But the fact is, Mitchell, he was disgusted by the whole thing, the way it happened. And it's really sort of a shame, but makes for interesting TV. And I can't wait to see the way they do Liddy and these folks. I think it should be wonderful. And everybody says it's a great series.
Yeah, you're going to enjoy it, I think. Martha Mitchell, a very tragic figure because, she tried to stand by her husband, but as you say, the mouth, she loved the limelight. She loved being on with Barbara Walters, and she became the darling and of the media as long as she was, bad-mouthing Richard Nixon. But it really, it tore the family apart. It destroyed the family and destroyed her ultimately. She died a broken woman as well, penniless, I think.
Right. Yeah, she perfected the art of what we call drunk dialing. And that's what she did. She drunk dialed all the time. She was always drunk. And it became a great caricature. She would show up on TV with the big phone and people would make fun of it. But she really was just crazed. There's one incident that just came out recently that it turns out when John Mitchell had enough and he wasn't hanging around her, he hadn't really left her, but she invited Woodward to come in and look at all her husband's papers, including his attorney-client papers, and Woodward came in and looked at him. And you look at that stuff and you say, my God, these guys got away with a lot of things. These reporters got away with a lot. That's really, I hate to say it, that's probably criminal conduct, to do that. And, but nonetheless, he did it, and all things were excused.
When it came time to, when the burglars were put on trial, and Judge Syrett was going to give them the maximum, 30 years for this third-rate burglary, but he wanted to make an example, I guess, of them. And McCord basically spilled the beans, right? He wrote a letter to Syrett claiming he perjured himself. At least this is the Hollywood version. You tell me if I'm wrong. Claiming he perjured himself and that this was not, a White House operation. It was part of a wider conspiracy. Is that?
Well, he did blame it. He came out and blamed the White House is what he did. McCord did. But let me tell you what happened. McCord had written several notes to the White House through his contact, the detective there named John Caulfield. And one of them, he said, if you get rid of Richard Helms, that's the director of the CIA, every tree in the forest will fall. Now, Nixon suspected the CIA was in this up to their necks, but couldn't, of course, prove it because that's their job, is not to allow you to prove it, have plausible deniability. And so Nixon shipped Helms out in January 1973 to be ambassador of Iran. And Helms burnt all his documents and all the tapes he had. He had thousands of hours of tapes. and of course, that's exactly what McCord thought shouldn't happen. He was warning the White House. And so when it came time for McCord's sentencing in late March of 1973, probably we all should have been yelling timber because those trees were going to fall. So what happened was it was a strategy whereby the CIA would come unleashed, come unglued on the White House so that they would not be uncovered. So when McCord writes this dramatic letter to Syrett loves it because Syrett during the trial thinks somebody in the White House has authorized these burglaries and nobody's talking about it. People don't know that McCord's a CIA agent, really a CIA agent, an undercover guy, an infiltrator. They don't know that. So McCord comes out with this dramatic letter and everybody goes, gasp. Oh, amazing. He's just unleashed. He said there was perjury at the trial. Well, there was, and other things. But he lays it all out on the White House. And of course, he has fired his regular lawyer, who was a very good lawyer. He was the partner of F. Lee Bailey. And he hired a guy that wasn't a criminal lawyer, but he was connected to the CIA, a guy named Bud Fensterwald. And so he and Fensterwald went together on this plan to now turn everybody's attention as the cover-up is cracking to the White House. It works. It works. Now, most of what McCord said was hearsay, but nonetheless, it works. Now, remember what I had told you before, that Dean and Magruder, I thought, were behind this, right? One of the first things McCord says, and I think it's to somebody who interviews him, he said, oh yeah, Dean and Magruder were authorized this, okay? Now, guess what? What do you do if you're in John Dean's situation and you realize, I'm next guy that's gonna be, and what do?
Turn over.
You turn over and all of a sudden you're a Boy Scout caught in bad company. Oh my gosh, Mrs. Cleaver, I didn't mean to do this, but I'm going to tell because I really have been very upset about this for a long time. I'm going to talk about
There's
Richard
a cancer
Nixon.
on the presidency. There's a cancer on the presidency.
Oh yes, that's exactly it. When Dean went in to tell him that, he did that as a last-ditch effort. On May 21st, McCord's letter to the court is May 23rd. He hasn't named Dean yet. Okay, Dean is still undercover. Nobody understands what Dean is all about. But on March 21, he comes into Nixon's office, says there's a cancer on the presidency. Why does he say that? He says that to try to get Nixon to claim broad executive and attorney-client privilege so that John Dean never has to testify. If Dean has to testify, now he's got a choice of perjuring himself or whatever, and he doesn't know who's going to come in and get him for perjury.
But didn't Haldeman ask Dean to conduct his own investigation? And Dean thought, well, if I do that, now I'm really, up.
Well, yes and no. Actually, the president had kept talking about the Dean investigation and it's going to clear the White House. What had happened was Dean had told everybody at the beginning that nobody in the White House was involved. But guess who was involved that was with the White House?
John Dean.
John Dean. So he was telling Nixon that, and then Nixon would tell the reporters, oh, I've got the Dean report will do this and that. Well, right around March, Nixon, and maybe Haldeman did also, had him go to Camp David to supposedly write the Dean report. Well, Dean, if he wrote it down, it would just be a lie. He knew the thing was going to crack, and he also knew very quickly that McCord was going to nail him, okay? McCord had him, okay? And it was hearsay, but it was pretty, you could probably link it by conspiratorial statements to Dean. Hunt had pleaded guilty at Dean's advice, and Dean didn't realize that meant that Hunt was also subject to be called to the grand jury. He would have to finger Dean. Dean knew his time was up if he didn't get Nixon to protect him and pay off Hunt. He wanted Hunt paid off, and he wanted Nixon to assert privilege. Once that didn't happen, then McCord starts blowing his deal. Dean had to hustle fast. So he's already hired a lawyer. He goes over, starts turning state's evidence.
Did he finger Mitchell?
What?
Did he finger Mitchell?
He did not. He originally, but Magruder did. Magruder quickly understood that he better have, because Dean could bring Nixon to the prosecutors on the cover-up, okay? Dean might have had some weak idea that Mitchell had, and he hadn't. I think I'm not clear if he ever claimed falsely that Mitchell had confessed to him. but he wouldn't be able to finger Mitchell as authorizing the thing. Magruder's get out of jail card was that Mitchell told me to do it, because you see, if Magruder said Dean did it, Dean had me, then both Dean and Magruder looked like the bad guys, which they were. If Magruder didn't finger Mitchell, but Magruder, it's natural, he fingers his boss. That gets him Mitchell. The prosecutors love that. He lays off Dean, okay? Meanwhile, Dean goes to Nixon. Dean lays off Magruder. Magruder lays off Dean. Dean gets Nixon. Magruder gets Mitchell. And Dean and Magruder look like little choir boys. They're both good-looking guys, and they paint themselves as being really just, aw shucks, we got caught up with these bad men.
Right.
And I'm sorry about this.
Dean sat there on his own during the hearings and didn't have a lawyer sitting beside him. And he was, I'm here. I don't need a lawyer. I'm here to tell the truth. Meanwhile, Magruder couldn't answer, what color is the sky without leaning over and getting his lawyer whispering in his ear.
Oh, yeah. He was a pitiful character. Even when even when the special counsel came along, he changed his story, like you change your underwear. I mean, it was every day.
John, got to take another time out. John O'Connor, The Mysteries of Watergate, What Really Happened, Amazon and Barnes & Noble. If you want to get the real history of Watergate, this is the one as we commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Watergate break-in. Back with more in a minute. A trusted sponsor of my show, GetTheTea.com, is having their summer sale. Hey guys, let's talk about Father's Day. What kind of gift would you like to give your dad? Why not think about a gift that would help his digestion? Remember, Life Change Tea is an amazing, gentle cleanse that he can use daily for gut health. Who doesn't need that? I know I do. I drink it every day. It comes in 3 different flavors: natural, peppermint, and my favorite, pomegranate. You need to try it. The combination of 12 herbs just does a beautiful number on my insides. Right now, they're having their big summer sale. Buy 3, get 1 free. That's right, buy 3, get 1 free. Life Change Tea is not a fad. They've been around since 2007, helping thousands of people. And it's made right in the USA. It's easy to brew, keep it in your fridge, and you drink it daily. It's summertime, and I always want to have a big glass of iced tea. That's why I drink Life Change Tea. Buy now and get 1 month of tea for free. Go to getthetea.com/Richard to order yours today. Use the code Richard10 to get an additional $10 off plus free shipping. That's over $50 in savings. Again, that's getthetea.com/Richard and use the code Richard and the number 10, Richard10 for $10 more plus free shipping. Don't miss out. You can become an official Patreon supporter of my work here at Strange Planet Productions by donating a monthly amount through patreon.com/Strange Planet. Patreon.com/Strange Planet. There are several tiers to choose from. Pick which one is right for you, but any monthly amount is greatly appreciated. As a sign of my appreciation, you can have your name mentioned on air during my weekly radio show, or you could have your name included in a crawl on my YouTube channel live stream. You could also receive episodes of my old podcast, The Rock and Roll Twilight Zone. This critically acclaimed podcast, produced in partnership with Chris Jericho, is not currently available anywhere else. If you enjoy this podcast or my weekly radio program, The Conspiracy Show, you can really get behind me and my work by donating once a month at patreon.com/Strange Planet. Patreon.com/Strange Planet.
As you're staring up at the night sky, ever wonder who's staring back? You're listening to Richard Syrett's Strange Planet.
And I want to say this to the television audience. I made my mistakes, but in all of my years of public life, I have never profited from public service. I've earned every cent. And in all of my years of public life, I have never obstructed justice. And I think, too, that I can say that in my years of public life, that I welcome this kind of examination, because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
There you go. He made that statement at Disneyland, of all places. How appropriate. Richard Nixon, of course, and then would resign. well, not too long after that, in August of 1974, not for the break-in, but for the cover-up. Let's talk about Deep Throat, because you represented Mark Felt much later. Was it after he was identified as the deputy director? We didn't know who Deep Throat was for the longest time, for decades.
My role was back when I was a young man in San Francisco. I had a fetish of figuring out who Deep Throat was. I was an aspiring prosecutor and eventually became a junior prosecutor. By the time that Woodward's and Bernstein's book came out, identifying the shadowy character Deep Throat, I was a prosecutor. And I made it my mission to figure out who Deep Throat was. And by 1976, I felt I could prove his identity to a unanimous jury beyond a reasonable doubt. That's how clear I was on the proof. Now, at the time, I thought, who's going to believe this junior guy in San Francisco? And so I just let it drop. I was getting married, left the office, and it was 30 years later, 25 years later, I suppose, that I'm sitting in the chair I'm in right now, looking across the table at a young fellow, and he tells me, just in passing, my dad was an FBI agent. He says, well, his grandfather's an FBI agent. And I said, well, what's your grandfather's name? Oh, it's Mark Felt. Well, here I am 25 years later. I have all this knowledge, and I say, well, your grandfather's Deep Throat. I think I know why he's not talking. Let me come up and talk to him. I think I can talk him into admitting he's Deep Throat. I think I can talk him into coming out, because I know what he's thinking, and I think I can disabuse him of some notions. And so that's how it all started. So yes, I started talking to Mark with his daughter's approval, Nick's mother's approval, and we're still to this day friends, and carrying the torch for Mark. It's just been something that I'm passionate about, and now it's going on 50 years that I've been involved in this. I started my first job the first Monday after the arrest, the Watergate arrest, and I was just fascinated by this.
How did you convince, you were the one that then convinced Mark Felt to come out as Deep Throat. What did you say to him?
Well, I started out by saying, and this took a while, Richard, but I started out by saying, when I was introduced by Joan as being a family friend, and then I qualified myself. I said I was a U.S. attorney. I knew his motives. He was a Justice Department guy, an FBI guy. He wanted to keep the system pure. So I knew that. I knew his motives. And if you're going to figure out who somebody is, you got to know their motives. Means, motive, opportunity. You learn their motives. And so I knew his motives. He wanted the story out to protect the Justice Department from any accusation that they had whitewashed the Watergate investigation. He cared about the FBI deeply and its reputation. So when I met him, I qualified as an FBI guy. I said, Mark, my dad was an FBI agent. Oh, is that right? I said, yeah, he chased German spies like you did. Oh, great. And I was an assistant U.S. attorney. Oh, great, great, great. And I worked with the FBI all the time. Oh, great. And my good friend is Bob Mueller. He was the head of the FBI. Oh, yeah, Bob. Oh, yeah. And my dad's partner, Bill Ruckelshaus, I worked for in Washington. For Bill Ruckelshaus? Yeah, Bill Ruckelshaus was the interim head of the FBI after Patrick Gray got in trouble. My dad's partner was his boss, was Mark's boss. So I identified myself, and he thought, oh, this is a great guy. I'm talking to an FBI guy here, John O'Connor. And then I said, and that's why I wanted to talk to you about Deep Throat, this fellow Deep Throat, Mark. And as soon as I did this, he grabbed his chair, his knuckles got white, his jaw stuck out. And then I started on, I said, and the reason we young prosecutors love this guy Deep Throat is because he kept our system pure. He kept it from being corrupted. We cared about that. We were prosecutors. My young FBI agents felt the same way. This Deep Throat is a hero. He was wonderful. And as I did this, it was like I was letting a man out of jail. It's like I was giving him a sinner absolution. And his grip loosens and his eyes start to melt. He's got these beautiful blue eyes, even when he's 89 years old. And he starts to melt, and it's like he's just in my thrall. And his daughter and son-in-law are on the daybed next to us. They can't believe this because every time you bring up Deep Throat for the past 30 years, he would adamantly deny it. Now here he is talking to this guy, and he seems to be, yes. Now what I did was I pulled a trick. I was talking about Deep Throat in the third person.
Sorry, I got to jump in here one more time. We're going to take one final time out.
Sure.
Amazing story, John. Absolutely amazing story. John O'Connor, Deep Throat's lawyer, the author of The Mysteries of Watergate, What Really Happened. Back with our last segment right after these. Guys, we've seen so many people making ridiculous money from crypto, but did you know it's easy for you to do the same? The Copy My Crypto membership site shows you the coins that the YouTuber James McMahon personally holds and allows you to copy him. It's like having a big brother who knows what he's doing. You don't need to know a thing about crypto or how to invest, as you simply do what he does. So let me tell you more about James. He runs the Crypto with James YouTube channel, which despite heavy censorship, has over 17,000 subscribers and 1 million views. Since March 2020, he's told his viewers to buy 26 crypto coins. Had you put in $100 into each one, it would now be worth over $53,000. Of the 26 coins, his top pick of the year, a coin called Phantom, is currently up over 440 times from when he said to buy. That one call alone has retired a number of people, including guys in their 20s and 30s. Remember, this is public knowledge. You can go to YouTube and verify this for yourself. So if you'd like to join the 1,300 members who copy James, then stop what you're doing and head over to copymycrypto.com/dollar. copymycrypto.com/dollar. That's DOLLAR. You'll not only find proof of everything I've said, but listeners get full access for just $1. You can't find this offer anywhere else, but act fast because the offer ends soon. That's copymycrypto.com/dollar. That's DOLLAR. Don't take this offer lightly. He's the real deal. Go visit the site now. If you're a fan of this radio program and the Strange Planet podcast, why not show it off by wearing Strange Planet apparel or drinking from a Strange Planet mug? Check out all the great Strange Planet merch in my Strange Planet shop. Just go to the website, strangeplanet.ca, and click on Shop in the menu. There's a huge selection of men's and women's t-shirts. You like crop circles or the Mayan calendar? Got you covered. Are you into the Anunnaki? Wait till you see these designs. My favorite right now, lions do not lose sleep over the opinions of sheep. And one of our best sellers right now, Truth Gets You Crucified on the front, and a passage from Matthew chapter 23 on the back. So many great t-shirt designs, I don't know where to begin. There's women's leggings and tote bags, and of course, mugs. Great gifts for family and friends who listen and love this show. My Strange Planet shop. Visit today and often. Just go to strangeplanet.ca and check it out.
The truth will set you free. But first, it will really tick you off. Welcome back to Richard Syrett's Strange Planet.
Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office. You will be in our prayers. Thank you very much.
There is the man who will be president in another couple of hours, Gerald Ford and his wife, Betty Ford.
Vice President Ford this morning, as he left his home to come here for this occasion, said it was indeed one of the saddest incidents that he's ever seen. And there's the president waving goodbye. You hear the applause.
There you go, August of 1974, Watergate, the scandal that for the first time forcibly removed a president from the Oval Office in the history of the United States. 50 years ago, it all began, June 17th, with the arrest at 2:30 in the morning of the Watergate burglars. John O'Connor is with us, The Mysteries of Watergate, What Really Happened. We're talking about how you convinced W. Mark Felt, who was the deputy director of the FBI, who was also the whistleblower known as Deep Throat. We're familiar with that character, of course. Hal Holbrook played him in All the President's Men. So you convinced him, portraying yourself as loyal to the FBI, and how prosecutors in the FBI felt that Deep Throat was a hero because his motive was to keep the justice system pure. And that's why he was leaking this information to the Washington Post.
And that's exactly why he didn't want to ever be revealed, because he thought the real law enforcement type guys would look down on him. So I wanted to qualify myself as a law enforcement guy. And then I would say the younger law enforcement guys like me that are now not so young approve of you. He cared about their disapproval. That's why he stayed in the closet. He knew that regular people would think he's heroic, but law enforcement people wouldn't. And I was trying to convince him, because I knew that. I figured this out. Most people didn't know who Deep Throat was. I knew it was him. It wasn't some noble person from the White House, as many suspected. It wasn't Diane Sawyer. So I switched from the third person to the second person. And I said, so you, Mark, should come out and tell your story before Woodward does, because you can tell your story in the way that emphasizes your heroism and your good motives. And as I said that, he's sitting like this. And meanwhile, his daughter and grandson are just blown away. Their mouths are agape. This is the guy that kept denying angrily he was Deep Throat, and he's listening to me, and this guy is clearly buying my program. Now, at the end of it, he said, well, I'll think about what you say, and I'll give you my answer soon. Well, he would only give, and I was telling him that he had to come out and tell a story. Well, you could only do that. You would only consider giving the answer if you were Deep Throat, and he didn't angrily deny it. Now, because he had, some dementia, once I left him, he kind of forgot a lot of the things I said, but I had stirred up a hornet's nest, and he would tell his caretaker, an FBI agent just doesn't act like this. I can't come out. I can't do it. And we went through this for a while. Okay, we went through it for a while, but eventually, it took a while, and all his defenses were hardwired, even after he started admitting it. And Joan and I were on him and so forth, and we would do all kinds of things to get him to admit it. He never really had said it. It took him a couple weeks, and I've got a tape of mine someplace. The first time he said, they admitted he was Deep Throat. At least he had just admitted to Joan the day before, when an old girlfriend called and admitted to Joan that Mark had admitted it to him at a romantic night when Mark was leaving for California and leaving her in D.C., her grandchildren in D.C., his were in California. Sad end to a romance, but they both had to stay with their grandkids. So he told her it was sort of a romantic going away present. I want to let you know I'm Deep Throat. And they had romantic letters after that, and she saved them all. And she was going into dementia, and she had all her letters out on the bed, apparently. So I talked to her. I realized she was going dingy, and she probably wasn't. Unfortunately, was lost to me as a witness because she was no longer reliable, as I tried to prove it to people. And then I had took a couple of years to try to get anybody to bite off on the story. I mean, I could prove it. I could go through my proof, and people seem to buy it, but they don't understand what lawyers understand, that circumstantial evidence is more powerful than, somebody coming up and saying, yes, I did it.
Just got a couple minutes here, John. Let's go back to your previous book, Postgate, how the Washington Post covered up Watergate, betrayed Deep Throat, and began today's partisan and advocacy journalism. How did the Washington Post betray Deep Throat?
Well, they did it for some years and are continuing to do it today. Woodward made 4 protective promises to Deep Throat, one of which he would never tell the world that he had a secret source of any kind. Then he becomes the most important secret source ever known. And that's exactly what Woodward promised him he wouldn't do. He wouldn't say he had a secret source. And he also said he would never name him. Well, he was going to name him when Mark died. That's one of the ways I talked Mark into coming out. Woodward's going to name you. You don't, Mark cared about the FBI, not about him. It's not okay for Mark to die and for him to go spill this secret that just besmirches the FBI. That's completely contrary to what Mark thought the agreement was. Now, that's one betrayal. Then Richard, they when he did black bag jobs, searches on the Weather Underground and the PLO, the Washington Post urged that he be indicted. and because they didn't understand what we today called FISA searches. And he got indicted. And the Post cheered for his conviction, and he got convicted. And the judge had given some instructions. It was like a kangaroo court because the Post was all over him. Okay.
Here's the guy that made the Washington Post, really, right. Because of his information.
And now I'll tell you something else. Because of his trial and what his anxious wife went through, she killed herself.
Oh, dear.
I'm not making this up. She killed herself with his service revolver. The Post did this. I'm sorry, the Post did it. Now, why was FISA passed? Do you know about FISA? We've been through this.
With Trump.
FISA was passed to protect people like Mark Felt. That's why it was passed. Because everyone understood. It used to be the FBI did this on its own judgment, and you didn't have bureaucracy. Now you've introduced the bureaucracy of FISA, which protects people that shouldn't be protected, but also induces bureaucratic delays, which caused 9/11. 9/11 was caused by FISA and the bureaucratic slowness of getting a warrant approval. Meanwhile, we have Zacarias Musai's computer that would have stopped, that the FBI wanted to open, but they couldn't do it because FISA grinds slowly. Now we have James Comey using FISA as a way of spying on the White House. You can't make this up, but all of this comes from them betraying him. Now I come along later on and try to get the Post to cooperate with me, Woodward. They won't do it. And I go through a lot of stuff in Postgate, other things of betrayal, but I will assure you that there are more betrayals than the ones I've just told you. And this is someone who has made their paper, made them billions of dollars. And needless to say, they do not like my book very much and are not really happy to publicize it. But if you want to know about the Washington Post, read Postgate. If you want to know about Watergate, read The Mysteries of Watergate. They both are fascinating in their own way. If you don't want to learn about journalism, don't read my book Postgate. If you just want to know about Watergate, The Mysteries of Watergate will suffice. And I talk a little bit about the Post in there and how important it was that they didn't publicize some of the things I'm telling you today.
All right, so Postgate, how the Washington Post betrayed Deep Throat, covered up Watergate, and began today's partisan advocacy journalism. You can find that at postgatebook.com. You can also subscribe to the fabulous podcast, The Mysteries of Watergate, and of course the brand new The Mysteries of Watergate, What Really Happened. The book also available. John, what a delight. That was absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much.
Well, I had some fun talking to you, Richard. What's good about your show is you develop long conversations and you have sequential thought, and it's very good for our conversations, our public conversations, that you have hosts that can do that. So I just give you great kudos.
Thank you so much, John O'Connor. My thanks to Ryan and Carlos, back next week with a brand new program. In the meantime, don't be afraid. There's nothing concealed that won't be revealed, and nothing hidden that won't be made known. What you hear in the dark, speak in the light. What I say in a whisper, proclaim from the housetops. Move over, Aphrodite, I'm coming home. Good night.
A new Richard Syrett's Strange Planet drops every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Subscribe at strangeplanetpodcast.com.